There comes a point in life when you get tired of waiting for validation, waiting for people to see your worth, waiting for opportunities that never come. You look around and realize you've been giving pieces of yourself to everyone else, friends, family, relationships, jobs, until there's barely anything left for you, and then it hits you. The moment you stop asking for permission to be great and you finally choose yourself, everything changes. Not overnight, but piece by piece, moment by moment. Because choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. It's self-respect. It's the first step toward peace. When you finally choose yourself, something inside you shifts. You stop moving with the need to be understood by everybody because you realize not everybody has the capacity to see where you're going. You stop breaking your back trying to convince people who quit on their own dreams why you're still chasing yours. You stop trying to explain your silence, your focus, your grind, your change. You just move. And that movement starts to speak louder than any words ever could. At first, it feels strange. You've spent so much of your life trying to be understood, trying to make everyone comfortable with your choices, your vision, your pace. But when you choose yourself, you see that your energy is too expensive to waste on explanations. Some people will never get it because they've never walked the kind of road you're walking. They've never carried that weight, never fought those silent battles. They only see the results, not the nights you spent wrestling with self-doubt, wondering if you were crazy for believing in something only you could see. You start noticing how quick people are to question your clarity once your path starts to make sense. The same ones who clapped when you were struggling suddenly get quiet when you start succeeding. When you were confused, they felt comfortable. But the moment you found direction, they called it arrogance. They said, you've changed. And maybe you have, but that's what growth does. You can't evolve and stay the same. You can't heal and still fit into the places that hurt you. You stop taking it personally. You understand that their reactions aren't about you. It's about what your transformation reminds them of. The dreams they let go, the discipline they never found, the fear they never faced. Your progress exposes their stagnation. Your faith in yourself makes their doubt louder. And instead of shrinking to make them comfortable, you finally decide, I won't apologize for choosing me. See, life isn't about convincing everyone to believe in you. It's about believing in yourself enough that you no longer need to. You realize that explanation is a luxury, not a requirement. You can't explain vision to someone who's never opened their eyes. You can't explain passion to someone who's content with mediocrity. You can't explain purpose to someone who's never questioned their comfort zone. That's the moment you shift from trying to be understood to simply being undeniable. You let your results speak. You let your consistency do the talking. You let your discipline, your resilience, your peace show what your words no longer need to defend. And when you get quiet, you notice something beautiful. Your silence starts to scare the people who were never meant to guide you. Because silence is power. When you stop giving them access to your plans, you stop giving them control over your confidence. When you stop talking about what you're building, you start building it faster. You understand what Steve Jobs meant when he said, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. You stop measuring your success by their opinions. You stop waiting for permission to start living on your terms. You learn that not everyone will applaud when you choose yourself, because choosing yourself disrupts the system that benefited from your self-neglect. The system that taught you to please, to perform, to shrink. But once you break free, you realize there's no going back. You begin to walk differently. You talk differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence because you know who you are now. You've stopped explaining and you've started embodying. You understand that peace doesn't require a PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't need to be justified. You don't need to post proof of your progress or seek validation through likes or applause. You just move in purpose. You just live. Learn about any person who's ever truly made an impact, whether it's an artist, an innovator, an athlete, an entrepreneur. Every one of them reached a point where they had to stop explaining and start executing. People called them crazy before they called them genius. People doubted them before they respected them. Because that's how it works. Clarity always sounds confusing to those who lack it. Choosing yourself means knowing your worth even when no one else does. It means being willing to stand alone if that's what it takes to stay aligned. It means letting go of the need to prove, because what's real doesn't need defending. So So when people say you've changed, smile, tell them you've evolved. When they say you've become distant, tell them you've found direction. When they say you're selfish, tell them you finally learn how to pour into yourself before you go empty again. You'll notice that the moment you stop explaining yourself, peace rushes in. Time slows down. Your mind clears. Because every explanation you used to give was a piece of energy you were handing away. And when you stop doing that, you start reclaiming that energy. You use it to build, to grow, to heal, to create. And the ones who truly love you, they won't need explanations. They'll see your effort, your growth, your intent, and they'll respect it. They'll adjust with you. The others will fade out, not because they're evil, but because your new frequency doesn't match their old comfort. You stop chasing understanding from people who are still figuring themselves out. You start walking in a way that says, I'm done proving, I'm done explaining, I'm just being. And in that being, you find power, you find peace, you find yourself again. When you finally choose yourself, you realize you never needed everyone to understand you. You just needed to understand yourself. When you finally start choosing yourself, you begin to understand something that most people never do. Solitude isn't a punishment, it's preparation. In the beginning, it feels uncomfortable, even unbearable. You start saying no to things that used to define you. No to the constant noise. No to people who drain your energy. No to the places where your spirit can't breathe. Suddenly, the world gets quiet, and that silence can feel like an echo chamber. You look around and realize there aren't many left beside you. But that's when the real work begins, the work on you. That quiet that once scared you starts to become your sanctuary. You start to notice how much energy you were wasting trying to fit into conversations that didn't feed your growth, trying to prove your worth in rooms that weren't built for your vision. Now in solitude, you have nowhere to hide from yourself. You hear your own thoughts clearly. You face your fears without distraction. You start to see patterns. Why you choose what you choose. Why you settle when you know you deserve better. Why you avoid the mirror that tells you the truth. And as those realizations hit, something inside you shifts. You stop running from silence. You start sitting in it. You begin to understand that the same silence that once felt like isolation is actually the sound of transformation. Every successful person, every visionary, every leader had to go through that season. The season where nobody clapped, nobody called, nobody cared. It's not the crowd that builds character, it's the quiet. Think about Michael Jordan. The man didn't become great under stadium lights. He became great in empty gyms. When everyone else went home, he was still there, perfecting his craft, repeating the same shot over and over until it was muscle memory. He didn't need validation, he needed discipline. That's what solitude gives you, discipline. It teaches you to rely on your inner voice when the world goes silent. It teaches you to stand firm when no one's watching, because that's when it matters most. When you're alone, you stop performing. There's no audience to impress, no image to protect. It's just you, raw and unfiltered. That's where truth lives. You begin to rediscover who you are beneath all the noise. Maybe you realize you've been living by other people's expectations, parents, friends, society. Maybe you've been chasing success defined by someone else's standards. But in solitude, all those masks fall away. You're forced to confront the real question. Who am I when no one's watching? You might not like the first answer. That's okay. Growth never starts in comfort. Solitude isn't about being comfortable. It's about being real. It's about sitting with your pain long enough to understand it. It's about feeling your fear and still choosing to move forward. You stop numbing yourself with distractions. You stop running to people just to avoid being alone. You learn to breathe through it, to trust that the stillness is working in your favor. There's a story about a seed that has to be buried before it can grow. In the dark, under the soil where nobody can see it, that seed breaks open. It's not pretty, it's not glamorous, but that breaking is what allows new life to emerge. That's what solitude is. It's the soil where you break so you can bloom. You're not being buried, you're being planted. And slowly you start to see the strength that comes from that place. You become more intentional. You start protecting your peace like it's gold. You start recognizing how your energy feels when it's whole versus when it's leaking. You begin to crave silence because that's where you hear divine direction. That's where new ideas come alive, where creativity breathes. When you spend enough time with yourself, you realize that peace isn't about the absence of noise. It's about the presence of clarity. You start to understand that solitude teaches you what company never could. It teaches you to love yourself, to trust your intuition, to build your foundation from the inside out, because when you can stand alone, you become unshakable. Nobody can manipulate you with loneliness. Nobody can guilt you into staying where you don't belong. You've already learned how to be whole on your own. It's like building muscle, painful at first, but once you push through, you grow stronger. Every moment of solitude builds resilience. Every quiet night sharpens your focus. Every time you resist the urge to fill your emptiness with noise, you fill it with wisdom instead. You began to see how the solitude you once feared was the exact space you needed to evolve. Then something beautiful happens. You start attracting differently. Because your energy shifts, your circle shifts. People who once entertained your insecurities can't reach you anymore. You're no longer impressed by temporary pleasure. You're grounded in long-term peace. You begin to notice that the people who once drained you no longer have access to your spirit. You've upgraded your standards, and solitude taught you how. That's the power of it. Solitude builds self-respect. It gives you back your time, your clarity, your control. You start moving with purpose because you no longer need the crowd's noise to feel valuable. You understand that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, it means being aligned. When you finally embrace solitude, you realize that it was never a punishment. It was a mirror. It was life's way of saying, sit down and meet yourself. It was training for the next level, the level where distractions can't follow and weak energy can't survive. So when people ask where you've been, tell them you've been building quietly, intentionally, in the background. Tell them you've been learning the power of being your own company. Because when you master that, you stop fearing loss, rejection, or isolation. You carry your own light. You become your own source of motivation. You understand that every moment spent in solitude was preparing you for the stage where your purpose can't be shaken and your peace can't be stolen. And when that moment comes, when the world finally sees what you've built in silence, they'll call it success, but you'll know it was solitude all along. When you finally begin to choose yourself, something deep within you begins to change, not just in what you do, but in what you attract. You start to notice that when your energy shifts, your environment does too. The people you used to chase stop calling. The rooms you used to fit in start feeling smaller. You don't belong where you once settled. And for the first time, that truth doesn't scare you, it frees you. Because once you start respecting your time, your boundaries, your peace, your circle transforms. You stop attracting people who drain you, and you start drawing in people who inspire you, challenge you, and help you grow. It's not magic, it's energy. Life always mirrors what you radiate. When you vibrate from desperation, you attract confusion. When you vibrate from peace, you attract clarity. That's why the moment you begin to move with purpose, the world around you begins to rearrange itself. You start meeting people who speak your language without you even having to explain yourself. You find opportunities that match your mindset, not your fears. The truth is, most people don't realize how powerful their frequency is. They think attraction is about luck. It's not. It's alignment. You attract who you are, not what you wish for. That's why when you're operating out of insecurity, you'll find yourself surrounded by people who take advantage of that. When you're operating from strength, you'll notice you no longer have to beg for respect. It's given naturally. There's even science behind it. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, or RAS. It's like a filter that decides what information you notice in the chaos of life. Think of it like this. When you decide to buy a red car, suddenly you start seeing red cars everywhere. They were always there. Your mind just wasn't tuned to see them. The same thing happens with your goals, your peace, your opportunities. When you start believing you deserve better, your RAS starts noticing things that align with that belief. Opportunities that were invisible to you before suddenly become clear because your frequency has changed. When you used to walk around tired, chasing validation, stuck in chaos, your mind was wired to notice drama, to seek comfort in confusion. But once you start working on yourself, really working on yourself, that changes. You begin to crave peace more than attention, growth more than gossip, progress more than popularity. And that shift, that's when you start attracting people who see you not as a resource to drain, but as a partner to build with. Think about how many times you've tried to force things that weren't meant for you. Friendships, relationships, jobs, opportunities. You drained yourself trying to make something fit that didn't align with your frequency. But the moment you stopped forcing it and let go, something better came along. That's not coincidence. That's alignment stepping in. Because when you create space by letting go of what's not right, you make room for what is. Let's be real, the hardest part of changing your frequency is losing people. You'll notice that when you start growing, not everyone will grow with you. Some will fall away quietly. Others will fight to keep you at the level they met you. But that's not your battle. The version of you that used to tolerate certain things is gone. You're not being cold, you're being called higher. And the people meant for your next level will meet you there. You'll begin to understand that energy is currency. You'll start spending it wisely because not everyone deserves your investment. You won't argue with people just to prove your worth. You won't explain your vision to those committed to misunderstanding it. You'll start guarding your time like it's sacred because it is. Every conversation, every connection, every commitment either feeds your frequency or drains it. And when you start protecting that, your entire world begins to shift. You'll attract peace because you've learned to be peaceful. You'll attract love because you've learned to love yourself. You'll attract abundance because you've learned to stop operating from lack. That's what frequency does. It multiplies what you already are. There's a saying, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. The same goes for energy. You can't evolve while surrounded by people who don't want to see you win. You can't grow if you're constantly shrinking to make others comfortable. The moment you raise your frequency, the universe starts protecting you from low vibrations, not as punishment, but as preparation. Starts removing distractions, closing doors, revealing truth, because not everyone can walk with you once you understand your power. At first, it might feel like loss. You'll question why certain people are leaving, why plans are falling apart. But in time, you'll realize nothing was lost, only realigned. The friends you'll meet after choosing yourself will understand you without pretense. The opportunities you'll get will match your purpose, not just your paycheck. The love you'll find will add to your peace, not take from it. It's all energy. The war doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you're ready for. And readiness isn't about waiting, it's about becoming. Once you start becoming the person you were meant to be, everything that matches that identity begins to appear. You'll notice small things first. Maybe you wake up earlier and the day just flows better. Maybe you start running into people who share your vision, people who motivate instead of compete. Maybe you get an opportunity you weren't even looking for, one that feels tailor-made. That's the reward of choosing alignment over approval. And that's the beauty of it. When you choose yourself, you don't chase anymore. You attract. You don't beg anymore. You receive because your energy finally says, I know my worth. And when that happens, life listens. You'll look back and realize that everything you were searching for was never missing. It was waiting for you to believe you deserved it. The friendships, the opportunities, the peace, the clarity, they were all already in your orbit. You just had to raise your frequency high enough to reach them. That's what happens when you choose yourself and honor your energy. The people, the blessings, the moments that come next won't compete for your attention. They'll complement your purpose. And you'll know deep down that none of it was luck. It was alignment. It was energy. It was you. When you finally decide to choose yourself, you come face to face with the one thing you spent your whole life avoiding. Your pain. Not the surface level kind that disappears with distraction, but the deep stuff. The kind that sits inside your chest like a stone. The childhood hurt you never spoke about. The betrayal you try to forget. The moments that made you question your worth. Choosing yourself means turning around and walking straight into that darkness, knowing there's no shortcut through it. Because real growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in confrontation. You realize that healing isn't soft music and meditation under the sun. It's nights when you can't sleep because your mind won't stop replaying everything that broke you. It's sitting alone with memories you've buried for years and finally letting yourself feel them. It's the tears you don't post about, the prayers that sound more like pleading, the mornings when you wake up and wonder if you're strong enough to keep going. Healing isn't glamorous, it's gritty. It's the kind of work that humbles you and rebuilds you all at once. But that's where your transformation begins. Because pain, when you stop running from it, becomes your greatest teacher. It shows you what still needs your attention. It reveals where your heart is still bleeding. And when you finally start facing it, you begin to understand why you were stuck for so long. You see, a lot of people want to evolve without healing. They want success, love, and peace while still carrying unhealed wounds. But you can't build a future on top of broken foundations. Every time you try, the cracks will show. Every time you ignore what's inside, it'll find a way to surface again, through anger, through fear, through self-sabotage. Healing means breaking before rebuilding. Just like gold has to go through the fire before it shines, you have to go through the pain before you can grow. There's no other way. In that fire, it burns. It strips you of everything false, everything weak, everything temporary. It shows you who's real, who's loyal, and what's essential. It doesn't destroy you, it refines you. It's not punishment, it's purification. Think about the people who truly risen from rock bottom. They didn't get stronger because life was kind. They got stronger because life broke them open and they refused to stay broken. I've seen people lose everything, jobs, relationships, homes, and still come out of it with more peace than they ever had when they were winning. Why? Because they stopped abandoning themselves. They stopped chasing the world's definition of healing, looking happy, sounding positive, and started doing the work that nobody sees. They faced their reflection, their regrets, their reality. When you start healing, you begin to understand that pain has purpose. That heartbreak that left you gasping, it taught you boundaries. That loss that shattered you, it taught you gratitude. That betrayal that changed you, it taught you discernment. Every scar becomes a teacher. Every wound becomes wisdom. And the moment you start looking at pain as a lesson instead of a punishment, you begin to take your power back. But healing also means letting go of the illusion of control. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You can't compare your timeline to someone else's. Healing moves at its own pace. Some days you'll feel light, like the past never touched you. Other days you'll wake up feeling like you're back at the beginning, and that's okay. Progress isn't always visible. Sometimes it's just you choosing not to react the same way you did last year. Sometimes it's you forgiving when you could have held a grudge. Sometimes it's simply waking up and trying again. There's a moment in healing when you realize the person you're becoming would never have existed if you hadn't been broken. That pain you once cursed becomes the foundation of your strength. You start to see beauty in your resilience. You start to see how every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every season of isolation was preparing you to stand taller, speak louder, love deeper. Healing doesn't just change what you feel, it changes what you believe you deserve. And it's not just emotional. When you start healing internally, your outer world follows. Your relationships shift. You start tolerating chaos. You start protecting your peace like it's sacred. You start saying no without guilt. You stop needing to prove your worth because you finally know it. You understand that real self-love isn't spa days and affirmations. It's doing the hard things that keep your spirit clean. It's walking away from people who don't honor your growth, even if you still love them. It's forgiving those who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. And yes, it's lonely, because healing means outgrowing versions of yourself that others were comfortable with. Some people liked you better when you were quiet, broken, or compliant. But healing makes you louder, not with noise, but with truth. You begin to speak from strength instead of pain. You stop needing sympathy because you found your own understanding. You stop looking for closure because you've created it. Eventually, that pain that once felt like a curse becomes your story of redemption. You start helping others through what once nearly destroyed you. You become a living example that healing doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. It strips away the mask, the pretending, the people pleasing, and brings you back home to yourself. You begin to understand that peace isn't about escaping the storm. It's about learning how to stand in the rain without losing your balance. You no longer fear being broken because you know how to rebuild. You no longer run from pain because you've learned it always leaves a gift behind. So when healing hurts, and it will, remember, it's not meant to destroy you, it's meant to reveal you. Every tear is clearing space for joy. Every setback is setting the stage for your comeback. Every piece of you that feels lost is being rearranged into someone wiser, stronger, freer. Choosing yourself means Deciding that your peace is worth the pain it takes to get there. It means refusing to carry old wounds into new seasons. It means knowing that the glow up isn't in how you look, what you earn, or who you impress. It's in how deeply you've learned to love yourself after being broken. Because that's the real glow up. Not money, not fame, peace. The kind of peace that no one can give you and no one can take away. The kind that only comes when you finally stop running and start healing. When you finally choose yourself, something changes in the way you carry yourself. You start walking differently, talking differently, thinking differently. It's not pride, it's awareness. It's understanding that you are no longer available for anything that doesn't honor your value. You've spent years giving too much, your time, your love, your effort, to people who gave back just enough to keep you around. You try proving yourself to those who never planned to see you, explaining yourself to those who never wanted to understand you. But when you finally know your worth, you stop negotiating it. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never built for your light. You realize your energy is sacred. You only get one mind, one heart, one spirit, and you start treating them like they matter. You stop letting chaos rent space in your peace. You stop entertaining conversations that drain your soul. You stop responding to every message, every call, every demand that pulls you away from your purpose. Instead, you invest that energy in your growth, your faith, your vision. You start protecting your mental health like it's treasure because you finally see it is. The moment you understand your value, you move with intention. You stop chasing what's temporary and start building what's eternal. You become more deliberate about who gets access to you because not everyone deserves a seat at your table. You're no longer impressed by appearances or titles. You're drawn to character, to consistency, to peace. You realize that not all attention is respect, not all love is genuine, and not all opportunities are blessings. So you move carefully, but not fearfully, calmly, but with power. And the beautiful thing about this shift is that you no longer need to announce it. Your energy says it for you. People feel it before you speak. You walk into a room and your presence commands respect, not because you demanded it, but because you embody it. You carry yourself like someone who knows they've paid too high a price to ever go back to who they used to be. There comes a point where you stop begging to be seen and you start being impossible to ignore. That's what happens when you choose yourself. You stop performing for people who only noticed you when you were convenient. You stop explaining your dreams to people who stopped dreaming a long time ago. You stop arguing for your limitations and start standing firm in your potential. The moment you start acting like you belong in the room, the energy in the room begins to shift. But don't be surprised when people start noticing the difference. The same ones who once doubted you will circle back, not because they've changed, but because they finally see what you saw in yourself all along. They'll say things like, "You're glowing," or "You've really changed," and they'll be right. But it's not because of something external. It's because you finally started treating yourself like you matter. You stop settling for almost love, almost respect, almost opportunities. You stop lowering your standards just to keep people comfortable. You stop explaining your peace as if it were arrogance. You learn that boundaries aren't walls, they're gates, and you hold the key. That's the freedom that comes from self-worth. You don't have to prove it, you just live it. When you truly know your value, you realize that walking away isn't loss, it's alignment. You stop chasing what's running and you start attracting what's meant. You understand that you don't need to fight for your place in anyone's life. If they can't see your worth, that's not your problem to fix. You simply release them with peace because you're too busy becoming everything you were created to be. There's a power in walking away quietly. You don't slam the door, you just close it. You don't explain your decision, you just live it. You let your growth speak for itself, because when you learned your worth, you understand that silence is sometimes louder than words. You move with purpose now. You spend your time differently. You talk to yourself differently. You start realizing that the most valuable investment you'll ever make is in your own growth. You read more, you rest more, you pray more, you give yourself grace. You start healing instead of hiding, forgiving instead of fighting, loving instead of chasing. Every move you make now has intention behind it. Every choice aligns with your peace. And with that comes a new kind of confidence, quiet but unshakable. You're no longer moved by validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You stop comparing your path to others because you understand that your journey is tailor-made for your purpose. You're not in competition with anyone. You're in collaboration with destiny. The more you grow, the clearer it becomes that your peace is priceless. You no longer trade it for the comfort of others. You don't let guilt pull you back into old patterns. You don't let nostalgia trick you into reopening closed chapters. You've learned that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. Because without peace, you can't build. Without clarity, you can't lead. Without rest, you can't rise. You start attracting differently too. People who once took advantage of your kindness start to fade, and those who align with your new energy begin to appear. These are people who want to build, not just benefit. People who see you, not just use you. You realize you don't need a crowd, you need a circle. You don't need attention, you need alignment. That's what happens when you know your worth. Your standards become a filter that protects your spirit. The irony is that once you stop chasing, everything starts chasing you. Opportunities, peace, love, purpose, they all find their way to you because your energy tells the world exactly where you stand. You've stopped begging life to treat you better. You've started living like you deserve better. And life, in response, rises to meet you there. That's the power of self-worth. You stop moving in fear and start moving in faith. You stop living in reaction and start living in direction. You stop surviving and start creating. Your world doesn't shrink when you choose yourself. It expands. The noise quiets. The chaos fades. The vision gets clearer. When you finally know your value, you don't just move differently, you become different. You become grounded, centered, unshakable. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to prove a thing because your life already testifies. You carry peace in your walk, purpose in your words, power in your presence. And that's the beauty of it, because once you know who you are, nobody can ever convince you that you're less. Once you've tasted peace, chaos becomes unappealing. Once you've experienced alignment, anything forced feels heavy. Once you've met your true self, you stop running after anything that costs you that connection. That's what it means to finally choose yourself. You move different because you've healed. You walk lighter because you've let go. You speak with conviction because you found your truth. You live with purpose because you found your peace. And from that moment on, your value isn't something you search for, it's something you embody. Choosing yourself is not about ego, it's about alignment. It's about realizing that the version of you who kept settling, apologizing, and waiting is never the real you. The real you is disciplined, focused, faithful, and fearless. The real you doesn't need validation, just vision. So from this day forward, stop waiting for permission to rise. You've already earned it.